Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 2 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I think I'm joined today by my usual co-host, John Goodall. But as I started doing my introduction, he disappeared off the video stream, which is incredibly distracting. And we're not live, but, we don't edit these podcasts. And he does seem to have come back now, so I'll stop waffling and I will introduce my co-host, Principal Cloud Engineer at Logicata, John Goodall. How are you doing today, John?
I think the machine gods are conspiring against us. I think we may have to make a sacrifice to the Omnissiah or something, like a Warhammer reference.
Going to be one of those days, is it? Where we're going to have technology challenges. Yeah. We have actually been plagued with those recently, I think, on certainly towards the back end of Season 4 and now the start of Season 5. We have it. There we go again. He's disappeared yet again as we're talking about gremlins in the system. While he's back now. He's back again. My camera switched itself off at the end of the last episode as well. So I don't know what's going on. Have you rebooted your Mac recently, John?
I do it every day.
Oh, what? Full cold boot?
Most days, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, let me introduce our guest today, Alan Helton, AWS Hero. How are you doing today, Alan?
Doing all right. And I'll go on the record to say I do not restart my machine every day. Definitely hasn't been done this year so far.
That was going to be my first question for you. I wanted to know if John is unusual in that, because I definitely do not restart mine either, only generally when there is a problem or an update. So
no, tell a lie. I didn't do it yesterday because I shut the lid on it, chucked it in my bag because I'm on call at the minute and I had places to be. So I went and moved on. So it didn't get done yesterday. Maybe that's
that'll be why then. Make sure you do it today. It's not used to it. It's not used to working this hard, this long. Needs a little break, like all of us. Even though it's only the second week of January, it needs a break, John. Anyway, Alan, tell us a little bit. I know you've been a guest on Logicast before, but for the benefit of any new listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, what you do for the AWS community.
Yes, absolutely. So I am an ecosystem engineer at a startup called Momento. We do enterprise-grade caching, hyperscale caching, and event messaging. Very low-level foundational systems stuff. A lot of fun. Prior to that, I was an application developer. So moving to a company that does system-level stuff, whole mind, had to rethink everything, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like you already said, AWS Hero, specifically serverless for a lot of stuff that I do just in public for the community. I was named a hero in 2022. So I have a website, Ready Set Cloud, that has my blogs on it, has newsletter. I have done a podcast before. It's been absent, MIA, for about 2 years. Thinking about bringing it back this year, but just I love helping and engaging with the community and just getting to know people for people, and also sharing what I've learned firsthand.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you on again, Alan, and I'll keep my eyes peeled for your podcast coming back on the air. And we have actually got one of your blog posts to talk about today, so hopefully you will be the expert in that particular article when we get to it in the running order. But before we get to your blog post, as regular listeners to the podcast will know, once a week I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John picks a selection of the articles that he'd like to talk about with our guests. And he actually picked Alan's article this week without realizing that Alan was going to be the guest. I think the stars just aligned on that one. So, we'd love to say that these things are meticulously planned, but we would be lying. But before we get to Alan's blog article, we've got our first article this week, which is a Corey Quinn article writing on LReg, the Register, one of our favorite IT news publications. And this was an article that came out last week, and we actually mentioned it on last week's episode, although we didn't have the article to discuss at that point. But there's an article that was published about AWS raising GPU prices 15% on a Saturday. Specific instance type, so that's not all GPU prices, obviously. Corey jumped on this immediately because obviously it kind of goes a little against the grain of AWS's pricing policy that prices will only ever go down. So, John, we touched on this a little bit last week, but now that you've seen the article, what are your further thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't quite know what to make of this. I mean, Corey's done a Corey and has flown somewhat off the handle about this one because it's a very Corey thing to do if you read any of his writing. And it's kind of his bag to look at pricing and look at these sorts of big numbers and then moan about them publicly on the internet. Fine, fair enough. It's interesting is as far as I'll go, though, because it's the first, I think I'm correct in saying, it's the first specific price rise we've ever seen from the platform in, 2 decades. We've had a handful of it's not cheaper, but the performance is better, or it's slightly more expensive, but the performance is better, but the previous version still exists if you're, if you want to pay less, you don't need that kind of performance uplift. But this is the first time we've ever seen a straight price increase. Now, for a lot of our listeners, I'd imagine you probably don't care because these are very specific instances and they are very large instances. So P5E.48x large, which is 8 very big graphics cards in a trench coat. Yeah, if you know what an H200 accelerator is, you know what I mean. And P5EN 48x large as well has gone up. And the price increase is slightly higher in North California than it is elsewhere. But again, that kind of makes sense. And no one really uses North California as far as I can work out. I've never seen anyone deploy anything there, even if you're out that way. So no, we use Oregon. Why? Because North California region is actually a bit substandard compared to the rest of the US ones, apparently. Certainly used to be. But yeah, this is odd. This is odd, if nothing else, because AWS has, generally speaking, committed to everything gets cheaper as we go forwards, right? So you'll pay the same for a T2 Micro now as you did years and years and years ago, but the price of the T3 and the T4G is lower, right? Or the price to performance. They never talk about price. They talk about price to performance. But in this case, the price has just gone up. So I don't really know what's going on here.
Alan, can you shed any more light on it?
Yeah, one of the things I really like about Corey's writing in general is that, yes, he does the, over the top dramatics, but usually at the end he wraps up with, this is why this is actually important. And in this article, he talks about the important piece of the price hike is that the precedent has changed. I remember one of the huge arguments I used to have when I was an enterprise architect was the vendor lock-in thing. And the excuse I was always given for we don't want vendor lock-in is, what if they skyrocket the prices on us? And I would always say AWS has literally never done that. Literally never done that. And that usually fell on deaf ears, but I was right. And this price hike, it really only affects a very, very small subset of people right now. So this is a small one, but this was the hard one to do. And so the next time this happens, maybe there's not enough demand for the supply that they have, so they have to charge more for it, which really is what this was. It's going to be easier to do, and it's not going to be the one-off novel price hike. So I'm a little nervous about that piece of it.
Yeah, he does mention, it could potentially be establishing a precedent. Right now, it's a one-off, but it'd be interesting to see whether AWS chooses to do this in other areas, because it very much goes against their publicly stated pricing aims and strategies.
It's very interesting from that perspective, because if you look at what's gone up in price, it's GPU instances, and GPU prices have just gone up consistently, right? Crypto explosion did that, and now AI's done that because GPUs are great for all of these big number calculation things. The other thing that we're seeing in the consumer space, which I imagine you're seeing in the enterprise server kit space as well, is RAM prices have gone up just ridiculous numbers, to the extent that you're seeing people doing mad stuff for their desktop builds for their gaming PCs, because PC gamer as well. You're seeing people do mad stuff like buying laptop RAM and then buying a conversion card that you then put in the RAM slot, and it saves you about 30%. The timing's a jank and it's really wobbly, and the performance is not as good as it should be, but you've been able to buy it at a reasonable price point, at a more acceptable price point. And in the weird bits of I want to say Russia because it's a very Russian thing to do, but I might be wrong. In weird bits of the world, you're even seeing people soldering their own stuff because it's so expensive now. I don't imagine Amazon's going to start hiring people with the soldering iron to make DIM modules. But as Corey again says in the article, GPUs, most compute doesn't tend to use GPU. So, okay, fine, whatever. Everything uses RAM. Absolutely everything does. So if that starts to affect other things, time will tell.
Yeah, well, I guess we have to wait and see, as you said. But Alan, I'm just interested in your thoughts, being a native US resident, on John's comments on the North California region. Do you echo that sentiment, or would you like to say anything in defense of the North California region of AWS?
No, I mean, I'm in Central Texas. I don't know a whole lot about that West Coast. There's a whole bunch of stereotypes from Texans about California that I'm not going to share. But I don't know. What is Northern California? Is that US West 1 or 2? Do you guys know?
I think it's US West 2, I think.
I mean, anecdotally, that's where all of Momento's alpha stuff goes out the door. I mean, there's something to be said about proximity to Silicon Valley.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Well, there we go.
He says, no, West 2 is Oregon. West 2 is Oregon. I should have known that. West 1 is California.
Okay.
So you're not, Memento's in West 2.
2.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so we haven't managed to mount a defense for the North California region. Maybe we'll have a future guest that uses that region who will come on and tell us what a wonderful region it is. But on that note, let's move along to our second article for this week. And you may be wondering what all these GPUs are doing. Well, maybe they're doing something with this. This is an article on the AWS Migration and Modernization blog, all about agentic cloud modernization, accelerating modernization with AWS MCPs and Quiro. So, John, I know you're chomping at the bit to wax lyrical about this, because you have been playing a lot with MCPs and Quiro, and I've been reading all about it and saying, John, can we do this? Can we do that? Because I don't do anything myself. I just get John and other team members to do it. So, wow, this sounds great. We should be doing this. So, yeah. John, tell us a bit about accelerated modernization with MCPs and Quiro.
Isn't it champing at the bit, not chomping?
We've had this conversation before, and
it's both correct,
English or American. Yes, yeah.
I have never heard champ.
No,
it's because it's a horse thing. Horses champ.
Yeah, both are used, but I think it's English versus American. I told my stepson that he was wrong, that a multi-breed dog was called a mutt, but in America it is. In the UK it's a mongrel. We use both words, but he was not wrong to use the word mutt. So there we go. Mutt and mongrel, both the same. Champing, chomping.
I shall continue to fight against the Americanization of British English.
Well, I think that's what I was doing there inadvertently. I didn't know that that's what I was fighting against, but when I looked it up, it's like, yes, most Americans don't really use the word mongrel, they use the word mutt. So yeah, champing, chomping.
Yeah, mongrel feels like a legit insult. That's an insult if you use that.
Mongrel. Well, yeah, that was the AI summary of this that I read this morning did say that it's often used as an insult. But
I could be a lot more creative with my insults.
Oh, absolutely, yes. But yeah.
I'm also dying. Apologies for that. Yeah, I think that's possibly part of the difference in language, is the British can get a lot more creative with their insults.
Well, let's not go there. Let's talk about MCPs and Quiro.
It's going to turn into lock, stock, and two smoking barrels, isn't it? Jesus. Yeah.
I don't have a beeper yet on my Stream Deck. Maybe I need to get one.
Well, yes, then I could just start swearing and we won't get banned off of YouTube. Oh, back on message. So I kind of went off the deep end on this a little bit, because I was loudly and publicly on this kind of forum, anti-AI everything for a while. Even though I'd built AI workflows, I was anti all of it because I just kind of didn't get it, right? I was anti-AI code assistance and all the rest of it because I didn't understand it. I then saw the light, had a bit of a come to Jesus, whatever you want to call it, and now I'm all over the damn thing. I do maybe 20% as much coding as I used to, right? I just kind of shout at Quiro and use agent credits. I think I've used about 500 in a week because I just don't write that much of my own code anymore. In terms of this particular article, it talks, cloud modernization has been going on for as long as the cloud has existed, right? And this is just a new flavor on, you can do it with agents, you could do it like this, you could do it like that, because the the problem is exactly the same as it's always been. You've got this old legacy monolith thing, and you want to break it down into something cloud native, and you want to break it down into something microservice based or whatever. A lot of that, it just involves writing lots of code, and coding assistants are actually really good at this kind of thing. Quiro is generally quite good as well at working out that there's stuff there, and you have a sort of a conversation with it, and here's what you need to go and do, and here's this really nice spec document, and kind of work through it from there. Your token usage is a bit higher when you do it in spec mode than vibe mode, and I still don't like the term vibe coding. It just, something about it just,
Where did it even come from?
me.
Why
Just doing
was
it for
that
the
word
vibes.
chosen? Ah, okay.
It's a very Gen Z term, and I think that's why it bothers me. I'd prefer to call it slop coding, but there we go. But it's generally quite good at this, and once it's kind of gone through that process and you can sort of step it through, it's really quite good. But it gets a lot better when you give it MCPs. MCPs, Model Context Protocol, it's basically a server or a handful of them that sits sort of behind it, and it can connect to them, and they tell it how to talk to other things, right? So Quiro comes with a fetch one, I think, out of the box, which basically tells it how to Google, which is useful. But once you've given it access to some of the AWS ones, and there's a Terraform power, I think is the term, which is basically a bundle of them, all of a sudden it gets a lot, I don't like the word smarter, because I don't like giving these things, I don't like anthropomorphizing machines, but they get a lot more capable. You do still have to tell it, go and look at documentation before it actually go and do it sometimes, but it is really very good. It will do things like architecture diagrams, as you can see in here. It will do code. One of the bigger wins we've had recently is getting it to do pricing for us, because pricing in AWS is really, really painful. But if you hook it into the pricing MCP and say, look, here's my architecture based on mermaid diagram, based on SVG file, based on Terraform code, based on cloud, whatever, it will go off and it'll kind of work it out. And because it's got access to the pricing data, it's really good. It gives you this nice kind of output, and that works quite well. We don't think this is the panacea that that everyone keeps looking for, because there's been, I don't know, modernization agent X, Y, and Z for helping old ladies cross the road at this point. I mean, reInvent 24, what was it? We saw one for mainframe modernization. There was something that came out for that, and none of these things are going to solve the problem immediately of you still need people to do this work. But what it's doing, again, is it's just improving the productivity, I think, of what an average developer can output. Of course, Alan knows a lot more about this than I do, because he's done whole talks on how to make APIs that agents talk to.
I don't know about knowing more. Maybe it's a different slice of knowledge than you know. But that's actually what the point that I was going to make about this article was, that it's not really talking about anything new at all. Like, Quiro's been able to do all the things that it talks about, but I like articles like this because the whole point is to make you think about it differently. And the thing that I took away most from this article was that it's pointing out the use case that you can basically just jump into a system and ask Quiro to summarize, what is it doing? Like, tell me about it. Which is, notoriously a very slow onboarding process for any developer, or if you're trying to jump into maybe an open source project that you want to contribute to. That's a hard thing. You're not always right. Not to say AI is always right, but you can at least get to wrong faster. And it really makes that process easier. And that is what I took away from this article, was jump into these legacy systems, figure out exactly what it's doing, summarize that however you want. I know consultants, they draw a lot of graphs and they tell you what your system is doing. Well, basically Quiro can do that in minutes versus weeks of expensive consultancy time. But once you understand what it's doing, it then can connect to all of these AWS MCP servers that know the well-architected framework, that know how to build things in the CDK or Terraform, or know how to read the documentation and start building out or planning these modernization efforts. So it says, well, I know what you have. I know what AWS recommends. Here's the plan. And then, go and do what John was just talking about and actually do it, quickly. But I find a lot of value in those first two phases, which is really what the blog was talking about, which was the analyze and then the planning phases.
And have you done this in anger, Alan? Have you actually analysed a system and planned a modernization? Or?
Not a modernization effort, no, but I have recently started contributing to a project from Valkey, which was the quote unquote controversial fork of Redis when they changed their licensing. They're building some UI tool to visualize your Valkey clusters, and I'm interested in that. I think that's really interesting, and they do things very differently than how I actively do things. And so I jump in. I want to contribute. I say, hey, Quiro, can you go and identify the patterns and just in general the way their coding styles that they do things? And I want to go in and tackle these issues that are listed in GitHub. So I always remind it, make sure you follow the established patterns, blah blah blah. But also, tell me about what you're doing while you're making the changes. And it's made my time to contribution drastically lower because I'm not in there putzing around trying to figure out exactly what goes where. It's really nice, actually. So no, not modernization directly, but open source, yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, there's a use case that is not touched on in this particular blog post, but I'm sure there's probably another one somewhere that covers that use case. And if there isn't, Alan, maybe you should write one on your own blog, and then we can talk about it on a future episode.
Yeah, sounds good.
So there we go, agentic modernization with Quiro and MCP servers. Let's move on to our third article for this week. This is an article on data center dynamics about AWS getting the green light for 3 new data centers in Dublin, Ireland, again, as the headline says. So, John, what was it that piqued your interest here?
I want to see if you can pronounce the Irish name for the planning consent bottle.
Definitely not, no.
Yeah, I haven't got a hope of doing that one at all.
Probably Anne Commission Planala or something like that. But,
I can just about do TSIC, which is their president. I can just about do that. And the odd Irish name I can manage, but I haven't got a hope with that one.
No. We could probably get AI to pronounce it for us, but we might need some preparation.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, new data centers, largely we've been hearing about them in random bits of America. I say random, it'll be in Pennsylvania or somewhere, with large amounts of space and random nuclear reactors kicking around that haven't been decommissioned yet, which is what we've been hearing of late, or we've been hearing of it in places like Southeast Asia, where they're doing, big capacity, or Australia, I suppose. So you haven't really heard about a new one in Europe other than the whole sovereign cloud thing recently. So I thought I'd pick this one out. In terms of Ireland, it kind of makes sense because, I mean, are we North Europe? I suppose we're Northern Europe. I mean, we're not in the EU, but like landmass wise, are we Northern Europe? I guess we're Northern Europe. We're not exactly hurting for regions around here. You do occasionally now find the odd capacity issue where you never used to. You do occasionally find one. I tried to turn something, granted this was in North Virginia, but I tried to deploy an M8G database instance and they said, no, fine, I use the 7, so you'd never used to come across that. But I suspect the same is going to be happening in Ireland and London as well. But it's easier to build out in Ireland than London because, they've got the landmass. Whereas London is very much, you don't have the space. Sorry, you're in London. And even though if it's London, it's probably not in London. It would be like Milton Keynes or something stupid. But yeah, we don't often hear about build outs outside of these. Either we're expanding into new regions or we've done it alongside some power deal. So that was quite interesting. Ireland has been an interesting one generally as well, because over the past 5 seasons of Logicast, God, I get to say that now, we've spoken about Ireland a handful of times in terms of tax breaks for grid independence. And they did that through buying a load of diesel generators, which just made me laugh, because then the next week we spoke about some sort of green and sustainability initiative that was focused in Ireland as well. And it's like, okay. But yeah, 3 new data centers, generally a good thing. I wonder how much of this is driven by the AI wave, probably all of it. Generally, this is good though, because, I like new jobs coming to areas nearish me, which is always nice. I like new capacity available in a region I might use. I mean, I use North Virginia for our customers quite a lot, but for things that I'd deploy, I'd probably put it in Ireland because it's a smidge cheaper than London. So I'd probably put it there. So I like this generally. Grid connection it talks about as well, capacity crunch, and there is a de facto moratorium that no one else is going to get new grid connections, but somehow they've managed to finagle it where they get 73 megawatts of power. Okay, cool. There is a purchase agreement required with a energy provider though, so it's one of those, it's approved but you must do this thing here, which I think is pretty normal for these sorts of things. But yeah, generally, new data center's good, new capacity is good. Capacity is somewhere that I've heard of, or not Australia, is also good for me at any rate.
Yeah, I mean, Ireland is a good DR region for people whose primary workloads are in London. So good to see more capacity coming online. And I guess the power deal, they're going to need to build out some infrastructure for this because that's a lot of power. So yeah, they're going to need the commitment up front to actually build out that power infrastructure. I don't know if you have any specific thoughts around the Ireland thing, Alan, or if any thoughts around data center building in general. AWS doesn't have a region in Texas, does it? Is there a reason that there aren't? Are there lots of data centers in Texas that are just not AWS, or what's the Texas data center?
There's a lot of controversy right now about data centers moving into the vast deserts or plains in Texas. Like Tesla is bringing a lot of data centers to Texas. There's a lot of land here, a lot of uncultivated land, a lot of solar that you can harvest in Texas. But thinking about this article specifically, probably unsurprising, I don't really know a whole lot about the GDP of Ireland and the actual local effects that it's going to have. But thinking about how this affects potentially developers, speculating on what changes. John, you already kind of said it, but it's likely bringing new instance types to EU West 1. And also speculating it could make potentially prices cheaper over there. Just having the additional capacity, it could potentially make data transfer prices go a little bit lower as well, just because they are more capable. I don't know, it's just speculation, but I view that as a good thing. I think one of the data centers was small, but two of them were pretty massive, like 20 times larger than the other one. So we'll see. I think that maybe in different
there's one.
I don't know.
1,400 square meters and then 20,000 or 20,000 square meters. So
yeah, in American, that's 15,000 square feet, 220,000 square feet in American. So it's
John's mental arithmetic is not that good. It's actually listed in both metric and imperial in the article. Anyway, on that note, let's move along to Alan's blog post. I can see he's taking a swig of water now, preparing to talk all about his own blog post. This is an article that Alan published on his Ready Set Cloud blog, which he mentioned. And the title is When Serving Images from S3 Stopped Being Good Enough. So, Alan, obviously, I'm going to come to you first on this, as it is your own work. At least I assume it's your own work.
It is my blog. I feel like I should go last. I feel like I should go last to see if my writing was effective.
Well, yeah, we can always ask John his thoughts. He did pick this out, not knowing that you were today's guest. So, John, if you want to go first about why you picked it out, then go.
No, I just always like Alan's diagrams. I think they're great.
Thank you.
Oh, brilliant.
I could actually start. I could talk about it. So my website, Ready Set Cloud, I made like 6 years ago, I think 2020. And I was brand new to this type of thing. I was learning in public and just wanted to get something that physically worked. And so I was using a static site generator, still use it, called Hugo, and Amplify, AWS Amplify, to go in and push that into S3. And what I was doing for assets, for all the images, the diagrams that John likes so much, is I have a little script that I run in the repo. It's all in GitHub. And I just say upload image to S3. And then I put the public link to that image in the content itself. And it worked. And that's great. And I love that it worked. And lately, with the with the rapid adoption of AI and the coding editors, I've started asking Quiro specifically, like, what can I do to make my website rank better in search engines? What can I do to optimize? and it said, well, look at Core Web Vitals. So I go to that, which is the metrics that Google invented to, basically quantify search engine rankings. So I started looking at that, and it was like big red. This like everything that was hitting me was images. You're serving too big of images. You're not caching them. There was one other thing I forget, but I was like, oh, I know how to solve this now. And
You work for a caching company.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yes, I do. Yes, I've learned quite a bit since I did all this 6 years ago, and it really wasn't a problem when I launched as well, because when the website launched, I was getting like 100 visitors total a month, and that's not a problem. Pretty much everything was cold. Even if I had caching in place, it would have been served cold. Now I'm fortunate enough to get almost 100,000 views a month. So completely different scale. And the article that I wrote goes about what I did to make that better. I didn't focus too much on the actual build out itself, rather the reasons why. Like, what are the capabilities that I needed? What are the pieces? Because content creation now is different because of coding editors, and I can just describe a problem and somebody can go enter that problem into Cursor or Quiro and have it done. So my goal here was to explain what the pieces were and why they resolved, and also show the follow-on effects to say that yes, the website is faster, but tail on that is I also get better SEO, and rankings in Google.
Yeah, SEO disproportionately ranks for how quickly does it load. I mean, looking at your performance improvements, this is something that we deal with some of our customers. An FCP of 4.5 seconds is slow. Under a second is pretty good. And this is a thing that we kind of deal with as well. And we kind of say, I'll just slap a CDN in front of it, but it's a bit of a faff. And then your pieces around imagery sizing and stuff is also very good. I was kind of interested in doing this because I've recently rebuilt my blog because I didn't have one before. I kind of did the whole WordPress.com thing and went, no, I don't want to do that anymore. So I kind of built my own off the back of something that I built. Again, static site, but because I'm cheap, I went Jekyll and GitHub Pages because I don't have to pay for any of that because I'm cheap. And equally, I don't need a CMS. It's only me writing in it. So that'll do me. Something like this was on my list of things to look at doing, and I decided I couldn't be bothered because I'm in the I might get one viewer a month sort of category.
I was excited at the 100 views a month level from Alan's starting point, and then he said 100,000. Congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank you.
What do you attribute that to? Do you think the massive growth?
Consistency. I really think it's consistency. Several years ago, I think it was 2022, I did it was both an experiment and a challenge myself to write a blog post, publish a blog post every Wednesday for the entire year. And I did. And I always cross post on the other platforms so they can get better visibility. And on Medium specifically, about halfway through the year of consistently posting every Wednesday, my follower count started increasing. And like week over week, the amount that it was increasing was actually going exponentially, where eventually I was getting to 2,000 or 3,000 new followers a week on Medium, eventually capping out I think at like 56 followers on Medium. And what's interesting is when I stopped that cadence after the new year hit, and I was like, I did it. I'm taking a break. I took like a month break from publishing anything, and when I started publishing again, the Medium new follower count just went to 0. It was like maybe 2, maybe 3, like not 1,000, 2 or 3 new ones a week. It's really interesting. That might be some algorithm rewarding me for being consistent, but it also provides credibility as a content creator when you have a bunch of stuff out there and people can read and you cross-reference the stuff that you've written before. Just a lot about credibility and consistency.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the algorithm favoring fresh content there, and once you get a bit of momentum going, it's just well, let's tell more people about this, and it's a bit of a snowball effect, I guess. But
I've had the odd flash in the
yeah.
pan on Medium, but nothing significant. Like, oh, that one got 1,000 views. Thanks.
I've not been consistent on Medium at all. I think we've been consistent with the podcast, but in terms of actual written content, I've always struggled with consistency on that. So that's pretty good that you managed to crank out 52 new blog posts in a 12-month period, and I'm not surprised you stopped at the end.
Yeah.
What's your current cadence then for Ready Set Cloud?
On demand. I'm really focusing not so much on quantity anymore as I am quality. So now that I've gone in and set all the stuff up with Core Web Vitals, I actually had to go and register DNS records to prove ownership. Google is helping me a lot with what people care about, what they're looking at, what they're staying on. And I'm kind of looking at that, at what people are concerned with, and starting to kind of tailor and shift more things. Apparently, a lot of people are really interested, at least the ones that visit my site, on comparisons. So things on my site that get a lot of traffic are like step functions versus temporal, or app sync events and serverless WebSockets in general. Stuff like that gets a lot of traction. So I might start, doing side projects that lean that way and create content for, what the audience that I have does like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges in our industry, both with AWS and many technologies, is there's lots of different ways of doing the same thing. So which is the right way and which is the wrong way? Is it something like 57 ways of running containers on AWS?
Yeah, Corey did that. He did 17 ways to run it, and then he did it again, and then he did it a third time. And admittedly, a number of them are kind of rehashes, but
But yeah, you can see why people need those kind of comparisons side by side. I could do it like this, I could do it like that, which is the right way to do it. So, it's one of the things that AI is quite good at, actually, or at least it can give you quick responses, whether they're accurate enough or not.
Werner described it as confidently wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll give you a quick and convincing answer, but whether it's correct or not is
It sounds like an American to me, confidently wrong. I know the stereotype. I live in.
Cool. Well, let's move on then from Alan's blog post to our final article for this week, which is another article on the recent AWS layoffs. So we spoke about the layoffs before Christmas when they'd been announced. This particular article is riddled with adverts. It's pretty horrible, actually. It's on the MSN.
Yeah, that's what you get
site,
from MSN, let's be honest.
Scrolling past the adverts, I've obviously been looking at beds and mattresses at some point because it's covered in that, basically. But scrolling past the beds and mattresses to the content of the article. This is an article on MSN.com. As I said, the title is Amazon lays off several hundred employees of Amazon Web Services division, a broader effort to streamline operations. So, John, you picked this. Have you seen any impact yet of the layoffs? Are you aware of anyone who has been laid off from Amazon?
No, I know from conversations that we've had that it's the sort of thing that worries people more than it works practically, right? Because the announcement was 14,000 people, and AWS employees, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, and Amazon proper employees even more, obviously. So a few hundred is bad for the people, sad for the people, and you see a bit of noise about it on LinkedIn. But in terms of scale, it's a drop in the pan, and you see this a lot with American companies anyway. In part because of how employment law doesn't work. Contract protections, not really a thing outside of places like California and I think Montana, of all places, because we had this conversation. So I'm not too worried about this. There's lots of noise lately with the whole AI wave of, is it AI stealing people's jobs? And in cases, the answer is not really. It's not straight no, it's not really, because we did see something that said, and this might be unrelated, I don't know, that one pot of money had run out and they needed to put some more money from a different pot into it. So they needed more money to buy things to run AI rather than AI outputs making the jobs irrelevant, right? It was just, we're going to streamline this a little bit so we've got more money for over here, which is all big corporate funny money anyway. So I don't see that this is anything different. It just always hits the news when people lose jobs at these big companies, because I don't know why. I don't know. I think the news expects that these firms are just going to keep hanging on to everyone forever because they've just got unlimited money. I mean, they do have unlimited money, but the only reason they have that is because they don't act like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they are quite big numbers and quite shocking when you see them in the headline. They are, as you said, John, as a relative proportion of the overall size of Amazon, relatively small, but they are still big numbers. There's still a lot of people looking for jobs, and I think it's just a kind of a general human element of concern when these things happen. What are your thoughts on this, Alan? Have you seen anyone affected by this latest round of?
No, I haven't, and I don't really feel fortunate or unfortunate to have seen LinkedIn change meaningfully. The article said it was people from like the Kindle and kind of tangential divisions over there inside of AWS, which explains why none of the three of us have seen it. We don't really roll into that part of the tech community. That said, they're not the only ones to have done layoffs so far in 2026. We're 2 weeks in, and Meta laid off 1,500 employees last week, and there's been a few others, but not from major companies. I see interesting, like, back and forth articles posted on what the 2026 temperature is going to be as far as jobs go. Like, some people are claiming that 2026 is going to be another aggressive hire year, and other people are saying the exact opposite. We're going to see a whole bunch more layoffs. That's, unfortunately, you never really see them coming until it's too late. So I don't know. I feel my heart goes out to everybody that's laid off. I fortunately have never been laid off, so I can't relate to that. I don't know what that feels like, but I can imagine that is a terrible, terrible feeling. Just being blindsided by an email and then your stuff stops working.
It's pretty cold these days. I have been on a couple of occasions put out of my misery, as it were, in certain organizations, but never by email or text. It's always been a face-to-face conversation. It's pretty cold these days that it's just you go to log on and you can't.
I had that happen, admittedly, contract renewal, but the renewal came like 3 days after the last one expired. So I got cut out for 2 days whilst I was in the middle of work. So nothing. Go talk to manager. What's go home. It's fine. We'll just take a couple of days off. It'll be sorted. Okay, thanks.
Well, I guess there would be a cruel irony if they had to resource lots of HR people to manage the layoffs. We need to hire some people to fire all these people. Therefore, I guess it's just easier to do it that way. I mean, I haven't. I knew some people in the kind of sales function in the UK who felt their roles, or who were told their roles are at risk. I don't know what's happened with that, or even whether a decision has been made around that. So I guess watch this space. This article is pretty light on details, but we know there are some big numbers being thrown around, so we'll just keep our eyes and ears out on LinkedIn, as you said, Alan, and on other articles to see what is going on. But very sad for those people, but it does seem that the general trajectory of AWS is still going very much in the right direction, particularly with the AI boom, etc. Did you make it to reInvent this year, Alan?
I was there. Yes. I had a good time. I even did the hackathon that was leading up to.
The road to reInvent.
Oh, the bus one.
Yeah. That was fun. That was an experience.
Nice. Well, I was just going to ask you what your thoughts were on the keynote. I don't know if you made the keynote. You as a hero, I'm sure you had reserved seating at the keynote.
Yeah,
but obviously the whole 2 hours of AI and 10 minutes of everything else against the shot clock was quite a change in tempo, I think, from previous years.
Yeah, all the heroes have a WhatsApp group, and we all just kind of message each other. It's super noisy. There's like 300-ish of us in there, and it was just lighting up when that little shot clock came up at the end of the keynote. Not super favorable messages for that. I felt really bad for the service teams that got 10 seconds for an announcement. They were a lot of engineers, a lot of managers, a lot of that were up way past their bedtimes leading up to reInvent to get that 10 seconds in the keynote and then move on. There's a lot of good stuff that was announced, and just because it's not AI, they're paying that price.
Yeah. It did seem a little bit condensed, shall we say? I mean, I don't know what the way to do it is. Maybe a separate keynote to cover off some of those announcements.
Yeah, but people wouldn't go to it.
That's in a bit more detail.
That's the thing. There's so many of them, right? I mean, I've done reInvent Grand Total once, and I did 2 of the keynotes, right? Because there's 4, so I did 2 of them. And if you add another one in there, people just aren't going to go to it.
Mm-hmm. I thought it had been longer in previous years, though. I don't know why. I think it's like 2 hours, 10 minutes this year. I was expecting it to be 3 hours, but maybe that was just my memory failing me.
It was the jet lag.
I don't know. Well, not this year. I sat here watching it on my computer. But it just felt longer with the jet lag when I was there in person. But anyway, and tell us a little bit about the hackathon then on the bus. That did look cool. I saw some social posts about that.
Yeah, that was a whole experience. A lot of fun. They flew us all to LA on the Saturday before reInvent, and then on Sunday right before reInvent, we got onto. There were like 10 teams of 5 people, and so they had 5 tour buses, like actual celebrity tour buses. They told me that my bus was last used by Shakira, like she was the last person in that tour bus, which is funny. And then they drove us from LA all the way to Vegas. As long as the bus was moving, we could code and do whatever we wanted. The prompt was build something, solve a problem that doesn't need solving, and do it in a way that is over-engineered. And so my team, being the farmer that I am, we did don't count your chickens before they hatch, which was a super fun thing where you just like upload a picture of eggs, and then it goes through like 5 different AI agents to pick out the eggs, add analysis about, what do they look like? What's the shell integrity? What's the likelihood it's going to hatch? What's the likelihood of the breed given the size and the color of the egg? And then it would generate pictures of what the chickens would look like if they thought it was going to hatch. It would generate songs of like words of affirmation songs if they thought the eggs weren't going to hatch. And then it kind of tied it all back up at the end and generated one more image of what your flock would look like grown up in a pasture. So it was pretty fun. And we only had 1 minute to present on stage at the end, which to me was the hardest part of the whole day. I'm super wordy, and I was the team leader, so I was the one that had to do the presentation. It's like the last 45 minutes of when we were in the bus, I was like, nobody talk to me. I have to plan a 1-minute speech. And as soon as I got on stage, the lights were so bright. Usually when I'm up on stage presenting, I have certain people marked in the audience, and I just come back to those people. I just kind of look around and I look at the same people. The lights were so bright, I couldn't see anybody. And I totally forgot my script because I didn't have my visual ink. So I just felt like deer in the headlights, like, yep.
And had they wheeled out the infamous shot clock to time your 1 minute?
It did. Yes. There was a 1 minute on the stage, and at the end of a 1 minute, they had this like huge gong that just went off. And the lights all flickered. It was a whole production. It was really fun. Props to AWS.
Did you manage it? Did you get your message across
I think
in the 60 seconds?
Like 57 seconds. I think I was like one of 2 teams to actually be done by the time that minute was up. We didn't win, but it was still a really fun experience.
What did win?
There was a Quiro knockoff, if you will. They made anti-Quiro. They called it Auric, which is Quiro backwards. That did all the opposite of everything that we've spoken about in this episode. So basically, it would take repos or specs and come up with the worst possible design possible and implement that. So it would take your microservices.
And then you could point Quiro at it and get Quiro to fix it.
Yeah. Yep. It was a really good, I'm not mad that we lost to that. It was a very good presentation, good idea. It was fun.
Well, that could be quite an interesting experiment, I guess, to take a well-architected environment, point Oric at it to make a mess of it, and then point Quiro at it and see what you get back from it. It's a bit like when you're testing translation tools online. You start with a piece of text, you translate it into one language, and you translate it back again using the same tool and see how close you are to the original. But if people have the time for that sort of thing, then
it sounds like you do.
I don't have the time for that sort of thing. I'm trying my very first bit of vibe coding because I'm not a coder. I've never written a line of code in my life, but I thought I'd have a go at vibe coding. And I'm using Lovable because it's free, but you get 5 tokens a day or 5 credits a day, and it has generated all of this code that simply doesn't work. So I'm spending most of my time in the chat interface telling the tool that created the code that it created doesn't work, and it's going, oh yeah, I can see the problem. This is what we need to do, and I'm kind of like, this is actually pretty frustrating. So yeah, maybe my spec was not up to spec in the first place. I don't know, but it's been an interesting eye opener for me anyway. So anyway, on that note, we have reached the end of our time for season 5, episode 2. I got it right there, John. Season 5, episode 2 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. Really happy to have you on again as our guest, Alan. It's been great to hear your insights and to talk about some of your own work as well. So thank you very much for giving up your time and sharing your insights with our audience. Thank you, John, as always, for sharing your insights as well. So as I said, that is the end of season 5, episode 2 of Logicast. If you're still listening, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed us, give us a like or a rating, or follow us on YouTube. Tell your friends that we exist, and we will be back next week with another episode of Logicast for you. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks again, guys. See you again next time.